It's the Geekbus, and I'm here to make a follow-up little bit of footage about my recent post regarding the pronunciation of the word milk as milk. We quoted our friend Brian, who was making fun of people who pronounce the word milk. I would have thought that I had said more than enough about all of that, about the othering that I think takes place in the way we hate mispronunciation and quirks of speech. Something that I think is worth paying some attention to is maybe if you're going to have to go around hating things, which most of us do with our little pet peeves, as I don't know whether anybody calls things pet peeves anymore, but once upon a time there was that idea, and I think embedded in the name pet peeves is the idea that you kind of love to hate some things, and I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, because we do. I love to hate television commercials. There's certain ones that just drive me insane. I'll tell you which one too. The most recent Burger King commercial with the most god-awful music. Maybe it's me, maybe I'm not hearing it right, but it just sounds almost atonal, or worse than that. I mean, whatever the worst version of pitchy would be, this is it. It sounds like, I'm struggling for a polite way to put this. It sounds like a guy who cannot sing, trying to sing, trying hard to sing and failing miserably to do so. Anyway, I hate that, and I love to hate that. And there's a number of other news personnel, and there's some of them I love. I don't think I could hate the ones I hate without loving the ones that I love. But do I know these people? Of course not. Would I hate them if I met them in person? No. I would hate the Burger King jingle in any case, but I wouldn't hate the guy who's singing it, terrible as he is, in real life. But I love to hate him and that stupid thing as I'm sitting there on the couch, shouting at clouds, as we old guys tend to do. But what's the real purpose there? I think isn't it sort of easier to hate stupid little things than it is really to hate other people or big things? There's a lot of ways to feel about big things. There's some things, needless to say, going on in the world today that I do hate. Don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of room for petty hatred in trying to manage our feelings and not really take the worst of them out on people we love and care about and such. And I think with friendships, and we fight over the dumb stuff, right? We fight over the little things that turn huge, but it's because they're fundamentally harmless, I think, that we do that. And honestly, milk and milk, and what was I complaining? I can't even remember. My own pronunciation of always as always. Things like this. I would grant somebody the right to hate that in me, and plenty of other little things. But even those, sometimes it's good to let it go. And I'm thinking of my new friend Vernon made this comment on that milk TikTok, that milk is actually how you say milk in Afrikaans, and not surprisingly also in Dutch. It reminds me that probably the people who do pronounce that word that way, milk as milk, and many other things that we are quick to jump on as mispronunciations. That I think I said last time that I kind of hate one-off mispronunciations. That is, that one individual person pronounces something a certain way that drives me nuts. I love to hate that more than I really hate dialect, idiosyncratic pronunciations. But there's another bigger point here too. In psychoanalysis, which is what we are in some ways fundamentally concerned with here at the Geekbus. But it is a way of looking into our past. And I really don't mean, this is something to get off on another time, but I really don't mean, well, your father was cold and distant and your mother was overweening and that's why you're the terrible wreck that you are today. It's not that I'm thinking of in looking into the past. I'm thinking of looking into a person's not only ontogenetic past, but phylogenetic past. Somehow a mind arises out of that body through development. If you look deeply into someone's mind or explore the mind together with someone, you discover that we peer deep into the phylogenetic past. and into the kinds of things that once were on the outside of animals of various kinds of, even before that, but let's just say for us, let's just say hominin evolution, 8 million years worth or so. Even that, there were all sorts of situations that were once on the outside and now have made their way internalized into the structure of our bodies and brains and into our minds. The minds are, on the way in to be laid down eventually in brain structure and elsewhere in the body, I think is one way of looking at it. And when you see that, those fundamental, deeply evolutionary tendencies. And I also don't mean simple-minded things like, well, it's okay to mistreat people because that's how the cave dwellers used to do it, just bonk you on the head with a club. That was the trope in the 1950s, the primitive caveman assaulting people with clubs. I suspect there was some truth in that too, but we're not looking at it simplistically like that. We're saying that there's all kinds of things. Something slithering in the grass you hear over there. There's an instantaneous fear of that. That's not because some mom didn't treat you right. That's because it's a good idea to be afraid of something slithering in the grass, even if it turns out to be something harmless. Because if it isn't, you'd best make yourself scarce quickly. So that's programmed in, it's hardwired at this point, very, very difficult to override for good reason. But in any case, the point being that we can discover a good deal about our motivations that reach way deep into the past, into our evolutionary development, which we're sitting on as current day adult humans. Maybe we don't have as much choice regarding what we do, what we think, how we feel, as we think we do. I'm pretty sure of that. Not that we don't have any choice. I mean, in a way, maybe we don't. But for our purposes, we certainly do. But maybe not as much as we think, I dare say. That's all by way of saying there are things that evolve and change fairly rapidly for us. And one of those is language. Language is always morphing, and that's what we're talking about. Last time I was talking about the argot, the slang of youth, and how that is, some of it is discarded over time, some of it finds its way into our language going forward and becomes proper language. Sometimes what was once improper and an insult to proper speech is now considered proper speech. The thing about that is who knows what we can tell about somebody's deep evolutionary past as we're trying to learn about them, especially in day-to-day life. But you can tell through accents and manners of speech and usage somebody's immediate past, maybe where they were born and raised. I know some really talented linguists with really good ear for language. They can tell you what state you were born in just by the way you speak, even if someone else wouldn't think that you spoke any differently from anybody else in your current life. They can hear the subtleties really well. And one can do this with practice, or if you meet enough people from different places, you begin to pick up on certain regional accents. There are ones that anybody knows, Minnesota and North Dakota, Wisconsin. You know those accents if you ever saw the movie Fargo. You do, or if you've lived in one of those places or spent a lot of time in one of them, then you do. And certainly the South in general, some very specific places, Texas, Alabama, you'll hear very distinct manners of speech. I've been told I have a California accent. I was born and raised in California, even though I'm on the East Coast now and have been for many decades. But I wonder sometimes, do I have a California accent, or is it just a certain kind of chill that maybe comes from California and is not, the East Coast isn't renowned for its level of chill, let's just say. So I don't know the answer to that. But you can tell. And so what I love about milk and melk being Afrikaans is that you're really, rather than hating on somebody who's pronouncing something in what you take to be a funny way, you could think, what's this tell us about this person's origin story? And what can we imagine the path has been for a person to be who they are, accompanying us in this world today. And it's fun when you hear accents that you recognize to wonder what the person's life has been like. Maybe part of being a curious person is to wonder what it's like to be another person, or what it's like for that person to be here with you and you with them, and what you have in common and what you don't. God, it's a horribly sappy old saying that there are no strangers, just a friend I haven't met yet. Well, let's not get carried away, but you could look at it sort of like that and think, let me imagine maybe the Dutch or South African origin story of this person who says milk. Maybe it's just one family member, one line in a wide variety of ancestors that this person has. So this is just a way of saying you can dislike the way somebody speaks because it isn't your way. Or you can view it with curiosity and view it as a kind of time-lapsed evolutionary inquiry. You get to see something about a person's past that lives on in the way they speak, but is in their ontogenetic, relatively immediate past, like where they were born rather than what it was like when they were a single-celled organism. That might be a way of dropping that particular petty hatred about the way people pronounce things. Now, I don't know that it's really going to work when you come down to weird idiosyncratic pronunciations. You might have to remain hating those. And I have complete faith in my fellow humans that should you find a way to give up hating pronunciations and decide instead to view them as windows into someone's interesting past, that you will be able to locate plenty of other things to hate, lest you run short on them. I think that's true, and I'm all for hating the harmless little things if you have to hate something, which I think most of us do. The reason is I think we run into frustrations as we struggle through this life, and disappointments, and it is a natural human response to hate things that disappoint us or hurt us or scare us, that this is what we do. And I think to try to deny that, to try to will that out of existence, is probably not possible. Hatred is part of the human recipe. So maybe finding ways to displace it onto stupid little things that don't matter is one of the healthier ways of being at peace with one's hating self without having to turn it on yourself or others in a deeper and more hurtful and destructive way. I say long live the pet peeve. And that's it from the Geek Bus.